Welcome to the VO School podcast, dedicated to the art, craft and business of voiceover. Each week builds upon the last to give you a comprehensive understanding of a career in VO. My name's Jamie Moffat. I'm a full-time voice talent and audio engineer, and I'll be joined by some of the industry's top professionals on both sides of the microphone to drill down and dig up the truth. Hello, welcome to the VO School podcast, and today I am thrilled to bring you an episode all to do with voice health and the more practical side of using your voice every day and how you can protect it, maintain it and keep it in tip-top condition. And I'm joined by Nic Redman, and you'll hear more about her in the bio section coming up, but this was a fantastic interview and full of lots of information, and it was a lot of fun as well. Now, I've got some pretty exciting announcements coming up in the coming weeks, and I can't reveal anything right now, but to be the first to hear about it, you should connect with us on social media, and you can find all of those links on our website, and that's VOschoolpodcast.com, and we have Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all that fun stuff. So without giving too much away, these are going to be real-world events that you can attend if you are in the northeast of America and hopefully further afield in the future. And some really exciting things to announce, and I can't wait to tell you. But right now, I think it's time to have a short ad break, and then we'll get into the bio and into the interview with Nic. All right, here it is.
The National Zoo. Because sometimes you just need to stroke a llama.
Instagram. Download it and start embarrassing your teenagers today.
Resolve spot and stain. Because the dog's gonna drag his butt on the carpet. He just is.
Engage the droid army with this LEGO Star Wars Republic fighter tank.
Hi, it's J. Michael Collins, and these are just a few examples of the first-class demos my team and I are producing. If you'd like to have something similar, visit jmcvoiceover.com and click on the Demo Production tab to find out more.
Nic Redman is a voice actor and voice and accent coach hailing from Northern Ireland and based in Manchester in the UK. As a coach, she specialises in accents and dialects, breath, articulation and resonance, and character voicing. She's taught at some of the UK's most prestigious institutions, including RADA, LIPA, ArtsEd, East 15, ICAT, the Actors Guild and the Actors Lab, with recent accent and character voice coaching work as heard on BBC Radio 4. Here's our interview with Nic Redman. So today I am joined by Nic Redman, who is a vocal coach, and we are talking about voice health. So Nic, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure. First of all, tell us what it is that you do and how you got to be doing it.
So, I trained as an actor way back when and accidentally fell into voiceover work because of my dulcet Northern Irish tones. I don't know if you can tell there, to be sure. Somebody needed an Irish voice and that was that. Yeah. In I went. And I thought, this is fun. So then that kind of took over. And I did lots and lots of voiceover work, and it was flipping lovely. And then I got just a wee bit obsessed with voice, to be honest. So I went back to an institution we have over here, a renowned drama school called the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama.
Fancy.
And they offer, they offer an MA Voice Studies programme and an MFA Voice Studies programme for all you American folk, which basically does everything you need in terms of setting you on the journey to vocal pedagogy. So it's all about vocal anatomy, voice coaching, accent and dialect work. You name it, voice related, we sort of cover it. We learn a lot about other voice related jobs as well in terms of speech and language therapists and that sort of a thing. We learn what we can work with and when we have to refer, and we do a lot of diagnostic training and things like that. So it really just equips you with a really in-depth knowledge about the voice. Yeah. So now I split my time between voicing and helping people with their voice or accent. So half my week is talking to myself in a wee box like we're all used to.
Yeah.
And the other half is helping professional voice users, actors, comedians, public speakers, anybody who's interested in vocal health or the voice as a mechanism or accent related. So I work with actors and I train actors in drama schools on how to break down and acquire accents. And I also do a lot of work on show production with accents and voice as well.
Oh, right. So you can get on the set and help actors to stay on course with their accent and things like that.
Yeah, that's the general idea.
Yeah.
But you're sort of a visible, invisible presence when you're in the theatre or on set, because you're just generally running around behind going, oh, it's change, not change, or whatever. And then you disappear again. So we have to be quite subtle.
Professionally pedantic.
Yes, but nice and quietly so we don't get in anyone's way.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That sounds like a fun gig. I'm interested in hearing about your MA. So that is what, 2 years doing that?
The MA is 1 year,
right,
and they have an optional second year now, which allows it to be an MFA, Master of Fine Arts, which is an additional year where you can work, but you do a little bit more research as well.
Yeah, so you really, really got into the weeds with the physiology and biology and all that kind of stuff. Right.
Yes, into the weeds, tangled up, confused, drowning, grasping for the surface, and then rising, triumphant, knowing all about the cricothyroid cartilage, which is in the larynx.
Okay. I didn't do an MA, so you'll have to
fine.
Tone it down a bit on the technical side. So now you teach at LIPA. Tell us about LIPA. And also, have you met Paul McCartney?
Oh, me and Pazzer, we're like, well, buds. Me and the Paster? No, literally never. LIPA is the Paul McCartney Stage School for anyone out there who isn't aware. The Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts. It's widely known as the RADA of the North, mainly by me. And it's great. So at the moment, this year I was teaching vocal technique, advanced text approach, so lots of heightened text work and bringing the voice onto text in particular contexts, and also accent and dialect work. So I train the first years how to break down an accent and listening skills, and then I also provide show support and tutorial work with those students who are in second and third year and who need more specific work with particular accents or their technique. So it's really varied, and it's lovely when you're a self-employed person to have a little team to go to a couple of days a week.
Yeah.
So I'm there 2 days a week, get to join the commuter rat race, which isn't so great. But
from Manchester to Liverpool.
Manchester to Liverpool. It's only 30 miles, but it feels like a lot more most mornings.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, that's awesome. So you're teaching actors going into performing and things like that? That's the people that you're coaching?
So the course that I teach on is, the acting course. And it's mainly people who, when they start the course at least, see themselves working professionally as performers. Sometimes throughout the duration of the course, they end up thinking they'd rather be facilitators or teachers or, practitioners in some other form, like writing and directing. LIPA encourages a real creative, active mind and a very proactive practitioner, so they do a lot of their own work. It's also a very big place for music creation and music students, so there's a lot of crossover there, and they do lots of making music videos and voiceover training and all sorts of things, so it's a wonderful place to work.
Okay, so as you're freelance coach as well, so who do you work with freelance? I mean, it seems like you work with business people and actors and voice actors and everyone. So who is your main sort of clientele for that?
Gosh, loads. Well, in terms of main clientele, I suppose it's probably actors who are already working in the field. So sometimes it's like you're an on-call doctor and they'll get in touch with you at 8 p.m. and be like, I have to have a self-tape in tomorrow and I have to sound like I'm from Somalia. Can you help me? And it's like, I'm in the bath. Do I have to? So we do a lot of work in terms of prepping people for auditions, or a lot of work prepping people for shows or people who are in shows. I also work with people who maybe trained like 10 years ago and need a little bit of a sort of reminder of things, a little sort of revisiting of the basics. I have a stand-up comedy background, so I work with a lot of comedians as well, and that's a very high intensity stress, sort of adrenaline up and down performance situation.
Yeah.
So you have to deal with a lot of tension and release of tension. And I work with some comedians who are doing longer tours who need a little bit of vocal rehabilitation and care, I suppose, and just helping them tailor decent warm-ups, to help them get to the point where they can do all their jokes and have a lovely free voice and not hurt themselves.
Yeah.
What you find with a lot of comedians is they tend to have like a performing voice that they don't even realise.
Yeah.
So I work with one comedian who has a very, very distinctive onstage persona, and the voice comes out in a very specific way. And offstage, she's completely different.
Really?
It's a different pitch. It's a different quality. And she didn't realise until she went to do a voiceover one day and they said, "Oh no, we want your on-stage voice." And she had no idea how to find it because it was created because of the situation.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of work you're dealing with there. It's helping people also with vocal awareness and understanding, which is what I like, because people find a wonderful freedom and liberation when they understand a little bit more about their instrument and the capacity. In terms of business people, a lot of that is people who are doing presentations and they need a little work on nerves or adrenaline, or warming up that's suitable for an office environment, because you can't be lying on the floor flapping around like a fish for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is tailoring things to a particular environment and making people feel comfortable with the voice that they have and what they can do with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. You said a minute ago that someone may come to you and say, "I need to learn a Somali voice stat." How do you approach that? You're not going to have studied every single accent and dialect on the planet. So how are you going to sort of examine that accent and pick out the key parts? Are there similarities? If you look at sort of geography, you can sort of zone in and work it that way, or?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things in there. The first thing is manage the person's expectations, because some people do genuinely believe that they can go from, East Liverpool to Somalia in an hour, and it's not going to happen. So there's an element of dealing with expectation. When you're approaching something like that, it's generally the best approach is giving them maybe 3 features to work on and try and nail or get consistent over, before the self-tape or the audition has to happen. Yeah. So that the panel or the casting people can see that they understand the main elements that are significant for that particular accent.
Yeah.
In terms of me approaching it, a lot of listening and a lot of looping this one phrase over and over and over again so you can really hear the intricacies of what's happening. Yeah. A lot of it's about tune and rhythm and intonation rather than just changing the vowels or changing the consonants. So that's the thing that helps people the most as well. I also find actually looking at the physical side of it, so the setting, what's happening with the lips and the teeth and the tongue. Yeah. And that can help anchor an accent for somebody. So if you just say, well, actually this accent has a little bit of a slightly tenser jaw than you, or a bit less jaw drop, and they can affect that change, then that can help you with some of the sound changes without even thinking about it.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So for example, if you're doing an accent that has what's called TH fronting, which is this, rather than think, thought, thistle, you get think, thought, thistle, like an F sound. Yeah. A lot of that happens because the tongue is in a slightly tenser, further back position and won't easily come forward to go between the teeth. So they can't get that th sound. All they can get is what is a substitution for that, which is the teeth on the lower lip, which is a F sound, if that makes sense. Yeah, yeah. So sometimes saying to them, see if you can get the tongue a little bit further back and see if that affects what happens to the consonants. That can be enough for somebody.
Yeah, no, I'm sort of doing that in miming it myself while you're talking, and that makes perfect sense.
Good.
I do want to come back and maybe we'll do another episode on accents because it's a really fascinating subject in its own right.
Especially for voiceovers when they're doing audiobooks and stuff. And maybe have to do 19. I'm working with a guy at the moment who's recording an audiobook, and he's an Irish guy, and he wrote the book and he's very much regretting putting an Indian doctor in it because he's like, how on earth can I do that in a sensitive and appropriate way? Right,
yes. We're going through this right now with The Simpsons, aren't we? Interesting subject. Yeah. Okay, so let's get back to voice care because that's the subject of today. Yes. So, very broadly, why do voice actors even need to worry about it? Because we speak every day anyway, so why is this important?
That's a question I get asked a lot. And the answer, I think, is quite complex. Well, simple and complex, I suppose. Some voice actors spend their entire lives not having to warm up, not worrying. They don't lose their voice. They don't get vocal fatigue. They can do whatever they want and they're absolutely fine. And that is great. Some people aren't blessed with that sort of an instrument, and they maybe get a little bit tired, or they get a little bit of vocal fatigue, and they need to just think about why that's happening. So for me, the simple answer is your voice is how you make money, and you should look after it.
Yeah.
That's the simple answer. Whether you think you've got a great voice or whether you don't. The speech we have in everyday life is very different to the speech we have in voiceover land a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And that itself can bring a lot of tension and heightened emotion into things, which has an effect on the voice.
And you were saying there with accents that you know, you move your tongue around. Does the physiology change when the red light comes on as well, do you think?
What I find with most voiceover people is that it's about habitual tensions that creep in.
Yeah.
And tension is the huge one major thing that will affect the voice. There's a wonderful practitioner. She's one of the queens of our world, and she's called Kristen Linklater. And basically, her remit is tension kills vibrations, and voice is essentially vibrations. So any tension that you have in the entire body will affect the freedom of the voice and the access that we have to the voice. So for me, it's about tension. So what happens when people sometimes go within a microphone, whether they feel, you know, the most relaxed and they feel fine, they do it all the time, there are often little bits of tension in there that can have an impact on the vocal performance.
Right. Yeah.
So it's about isolating that and just giving a few little things to help out.
So everyone's physiology is different, as you just said. So are there any standard problems that people face, or is it just, you know, you have to deal one-on-one with everyone's sort of unique, you know, issues?
So it's very bespoke generally, but there are commonalities that you see all of the time because of life and society and the way we have to hold ourselves, or the tensions we have, or the stresses we're under. So the things that always come up are, number one, jaw tension, particularly in the UK, because we live in a stiff upper lip. Yep. You know, don't say that, that's fine, just carry on regardless sort of an environment. So there's a lot of jaw tension, physically restricting the ability for the voice to come out. And that's sort of a psychosomatic influence in terms of how the brain can impact vocal performance. Tongue tension is an offshoot of that. So you get a lot of tension at the back of the tongue root, which affects laryngeal freedom, or freedom of the larynx where the voice is made, because the tongue and the larynx are directly connected. Yeah. Also, neck and shoulder tension is rife. You know, people like me, for example, I carry a toddler around for a large portion of my life, so my hips are all out of whack and my shoulders are a little bit tense and my neck is tense, and that tension has an effect on the freedom of the voice and the breath. Alignment is a huge thing at the moment. We call it text neck. But this constant looking down at the phone situation is having an effect on what we would call a head-neck-back relationship. Yeah. So the alignment of the head and the neck and the upper back.
You're basically describing me right now, but carry on. Everything you've said so far, I'm like, yep.
And I've never even met you.
Yeah.
I can see you. I've got a camera.
Yeah, I know. I'm just checking my webcam isn't on.
So, yeah, a lot of it is all related to alignment in terms of tension in the neck, the shoulders, the back. And all this impacts on vocal freedom, ultimately, and freedom of the breath. So, articulatory stuff a lot of the time. Sometimes people need pointing out that they trip over the same words and they just need that pattern pointed out to them. So you can say, yeah, you seem to always trip over or get a little bit lost on consonants that involve the tongue tip, like T and D and L and N. So perhaps we need to look at some specific tongue twisters for you in that area.
Right, so what does the tongue twister do then?
So the tongue twister, I suppose the job of the tongue twister is to work on muscularity and clarity. So when it comes to articulation or freedom of the voice and the clarity, and I suppose old school days it was diction and elocution, is twofold. One is release. So you want to release the articulators. And when I say articulators, I mean the tongue, the jaw, the lips, the soft palate. I want to loosen those so that they're free to move and respond to the needs of the voice. And what the tongue twister then does is, I suppose, energize and tone. So if we were to compare it to going to the gym, she says, as a non-gym goer, it's the stretching and the warming up is the release of the articulators, and then the lifting the weights is the toning and the getting the responsiveness that you need.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that makes sense, because there are books of tongue twisters that you can buy, but they have to be specific to your unique issues. Is that right? I mean, different tongue twisters will work the tongue in a different way, and the jaw as well, I suppose, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. What you tend to find is, with tongue twisters, some people will find some dead easy, and the person next to them will be baffled because they can't do that one. And then you'll introduce another one, and the baffled person all of a sudden will be like, oh, that one's easy. And the other person will be like, oh, well, I can't do that one.
Yeah.
And that's because they work very different parts of the tongue, or they have a certain repetitive sound that someone struggles with, or that someone finds really easy. So there are loads of tongue twisters, and tongue twisters are good for anybody at any stage, even just for fun.
Yeah.
But I find when I'm listening to people and working with people, I can hear the I suppose patterns of the ones that they struggle with, or you can hear the bit of the tongue that might be lazy, or the lips. Like, for me, it's what's called, I'm very lazy with my lips. We call them the bilabial consonants, 2 lips. So M's and P and B. So if I jump in the booth without warming up and try to do some work because I'm having a really busy day or I'm super lazy, I find the B's and the P's and the M's are really weak. So I try to do tongue twisters that have lots of those in them.
Ah, well, I'd like to get on to warm-ups right now, actually. I have my own warm-up technique that I use. And I don't know whether it's any good or not, but I just have this thing that if I'm going to a session, I'll be doing it in the lift on the way up, or in the bathroom before you go in. And I find maybe it's just a psychosomatic thing, but I feel like I'm ready to go once I've done it. But I focus on, I do the whole thing of getting the lips moving, and I do the thing. I learned this at Stella Adler with the painting, the scream. I sort of do that. I sort of pull the sides of my face down.
Great.
That sort of helps me sort of release my jaw a bit because I get TMJ. And what else do I do? I sort of open my mouth and open my eyes wide and just sort of stretch out my face. And it all that feels like, maybe, like I say, it's all psychosomatic, but I sort of feel ready to go. So what do you think about that specific warm-up? I'm looking for specific advice here. You should quit. No,
okay, what you're doing there ultimately, so you described, which is a lip trill, which is works various things in terms of voice. So it works encouraging a consistent airflow, which is great because airflow is really important, and a lot of voiceovers can have a tendency to talk but hold the airflow so it sounds, because they know they've got a really big phrase coming up and they don't want to let the air out, so everything sounds a little bit tight and a little bit controlled. And always we're encouraged to keep the airflow moving. So lip trills, if you add a little gentle siren, a little slide underneath, what you get there is lovely closure of the vocal folds, because that is what's called a semi-occluded vocal tract exercise, big word alert, which basically means, as well as the breath pressure from underneath the vocal folds from the air coming out, you also get a little bit of back pressure from the lips, which helps the vocal folds close from the top as well. So you get really lovely, safe closure, which is really what you want for warming up. You get that lovely, consistent airflow, you get good closure, and you also get the lips moving, which is great and releasing. And all that face stuff you work described as great, so kind of lion face or clown face, and then scrunching into lemon face, even gurning. Gurning is an amazing exercise for getting the face released. And ultimately what we're trying to do there is encourage a bit of release in the muscles, a bit of length in the muscles, so they can be a bit more responsive.
Yeah.
Would you like me to suggest other things for you?
Please.
So for me, and the thing that gets neglected first is the fact that the voice and body are intrinsically linked. So yes, go straight ahead, make some noise gently and work the face, but remember that the breath comes into breath comes into your lungs are attached to your spine, Your lungs are in your ribs, which are attached to your spine. Your spine's attached to your pelvis. Your pelvis is attached to your leg bones, and everything is interconnected. So it's really important to get the whole body going as well. So for me, it's all about, and nearly every practitioner out there in terms of voice would say, a really good mantra in terms of warm-up is release, then breath, then resonance or vocal quality or the vibrations, and then articulation. So what you're doing is releasing as much tension in the body as you can, playing around with the breath, getting the breath moving, connecting with the breath. Then you're playing with the sound as it comes out. So you're playing around with all the different resonance spaces you have available, whether that's a kind of a nasal sound, nasally sound, or whether that's a kind of a lovely chesty sound, or whether that's like a throaty pharyngeal sound, to get a lovely balance of those vocal qualities in the voice. And then the articulation, which is shaping the sound as it comes out. So what you could do is any kind of physical exercise as well. So even star jumps or having a bit of a twerk to yourself in the lift if there's nobody there.
I do that anyway, so.
Oh, good. Well,
Yeah.
Everybody should be twerking as much as possible. Anything that gets the breath going as well is lovely. Really energises the breath, gets things moving, is good for me. And then anything that plays with the voice as well. So like I was doing all those silly little exercises shifting the vocal quality is brilliant.
Yeah.
Because you may only voice in this place and that's where your voice is and that's all you get hired for and that's lovely. But the problem is if you're constantly in that place, the rest of the voice goes, oh, I'm not needed anymore.
Right.
So it can become a little bit harder to access other vocal
withers
qualities.
a bit, yeah.
Yeah, which is the problem. You'll find, I mean, I don't know if you get this, but if you've ever met an opera singer, sometimes their actual speaking voice sounds like opera as well, because they're so used to singing in what they may call tilt position. So the larynx is tilted a little bit. They give them that kind of lovely sort of quality that they find it really hard to come out of that.
Oh.
So the encouragement in terms of voice work generally is play around in all bits of your voice, even if you're not using it on a day-to-day basis. That comes from a wonderful man called Dane Chalfin, who I do a lot of CPD with and training with.
Yeah.
So yeah, play around. So for example, open up the nasal resonance by that kind of lovely nye, 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 kind of child taunt area. So nye, 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 nye. That brings a lovely brightness and opens up the nasal area. Then you could do a lovely... if you give the chest a bit of a bang and do lots of lovely ah vowels like you can't carve up part of a shark, like a dead posh British person while banging your chest.
Yeah.
That can open up some of the lower chest resonances, which bring warmth and a sense of space and size sometimes. Or a lovely kind of Joanna Lumley sort of a plummy, sort of hooty voice is nice just to bring that pharyngeal resonance in, throat resonance. And then oral is... they're kind of a lovely, I'm sorry, Italians. Hey, Luigi, kind of a bright Italian sound. So it's about opening up all those spaces and having access to it for when the emotion of the read might need it.
And presumably, the more you become aware of this, if you're mid-session and, you find yourself stumbling or you feel like your voice is going off kilter a little bit, you can employ some of this and this will help you get back on track?
Yeah, I think so. I think it very much depends on the environment that the producer in the studio set up. Some people, you go in there, you do the job and you leave and that's it.
Yeah.
If it's a long-term job or, a long session, then I think it's absolutely okay to, in a non-diva-like way, say, listen, can I just have a minute to do some stretches here, or I just need to have 5 minutes of rest or whatever. I always encourage people, if they're doing long-form narration like big e-learning projects or audiobooks, that sort of a thing, to see if they can have even 1 minute or 2 minutes every hour or more regularly, depending on how long the session is or when they can get it. Just do a couple of gentle spine rolls, which is where you sort of stand with your feet under your hips, allowing the knees to stay free. You just let the neck release and then you sort of gently roll with the arms nice and loosely down towards the floor, just to allow the spine to lengthen a little bit more and release the neck. And you can just have a little jiggle while you're down there. So you sort of fold it over yourself, if you know what I mean, hanging at the waist. Does that make sense? Have a little jiggle, have a little towards the floor and let gravity sort of bring a bit more length and space into the spine for you, which can help with any tensions that might come from standing or sitting for a long period of time.
Right.
Or just do a few little release exercises, a few stretches with the neck gently, rolling the shoulders. Even, I love just a little up and down as well, can remind the vocal folds of that lovely good closure that they need to phonate efficiently. So if you're in a position when you've got a lovely relationship with the producer and they don't mind if you take a minute every now and again to do that, or just have a little stretch out while they're talking amongst themselves. You know, if they stop to say, oh, hang on a sec.
Yeah.
Can we just talk about that? And you know that thing where they kind of talk amongst themselves through the glass and you're sat there going, oh my God, are they saying I'm terrible?
Yeah.
What are they saying? Instead of faffing or worrying about that, just do a little spine roll or give the neck a little rub, have a little siren, would be my advice.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
I can't remember the question. Sorry, I waffled.
No. It was to do with doing that mid-session and getting you back on track. No, that was absolutely right. So you mentioned there about longer sessions. Are there things that you can do to build your voice over time to help with stamina, things like that?
Yes, there are. Describing them over podcast might be quite difficult.
Right,
Ultimately, vocal awareness is key for these longer sessions. So you need to be aware of the how your voice responds or reacts to longer sessions. If you find you get a little bit hoarse, then you need to come to someone like me and say, look, well, after a voice for 3 or 4 hours, I find I get a little bit tense. What someone like me will do is then take a look at you and get you to voice something and go, okay, well, I can see tongue root tension, I can see shoulder tension, blah, blah, blah. The first thing everyone should be aware of for any session, whether it's thank you for calling, your call is important to us, please hold, or once upon a time, 500,000 words later, is alignment. Everything comes back to alignment. So when I say alignment, what I mean old school wise is posture. And we're not talking about, straight back, chest out in the army posture. We're talking about aligning the body and how it naturally is supposed to be, like how we come out as babies. If you ever get the chance to watch a toddler, I
thought you were going to say a birth.
Oh yeah, everybody, just have a little knock on the window. In you go. Christ, no.
Slightly traumatic.
No one needs to see that. Hell no. Not even mothers.
Toddlers. Yeah.
So if you get to see a toddler, what you find is they squat a lot.
Yeah.
Everything is from the legs. Their backs are beautifully in line. All of the 4 curves of the spine are just working. The neck and the head are beautifully aligned. They spend a lot of time in what Alexander technique practitioners would say is monkey position, which is this sort of ape-like, knees bent, slightly leaning over at the waist, arms nice and loose, and head and neck in a beautifully aligned position. Because it's exactly how we were designed, and they squat up and down, everything's gorgeous. What happens as adults is, well, life, I suppose. Bags on one shoulder, kid on the other, lots of shopping, driving a lot, not wanting to ask the technician to change the microphone position so that you can lower your chin, those sorts of things. So I suppose if I was to give a couple of tips in terms of going into those longer sessions that you could do immediately, is check you're not jutting your chin out, check you're not kind of stretching up with the chin or stretching out with the chin. Just allow the chin to come back towards the spine a little bit. In terms of preparing, also make sure that you're allowing the abs to release as much as possible to allow the breath in and for the support muscles to do their job down in the abdomen. In terms of things you could do over time, it would start with alignment as well. So I would say find somebody who can get their hands on you a little bit. Check that everything's in line. Check that your natural and instinctive vocal support mechanism is working so that you're not working with too little air or too much air, or you're not pushing air too much or holding air back. And then I think that's the key. It's breath. It's really about breath. And sometimes people come to you and they expect one thing and that'll be it. And, oh, great, it's fixed. I'll never lose my voice again. Great, the end.
Yeah.
And that's it done. And sadly, it doesn't work like that. I mean, It would be amazing.
That's fascinating. I never expected you to respond with alignment being the key to a long session, but now you explain it, it makes absolute perfect sense.
Because if you just an experiment, and listeners at home, why don't you try this as well?
I'm standing up and doing these things while you're talking. It is helping, absolutely.
Yeah. So if you just raise your chin up, like and sort of, so you've got a little bit more stretch, or jut your chin out. It's about thinking what can you feel happening to the rest of the body. So when I jut my chin forward, what I can feel happening is strain down the front of my neck. I can feel the back of my spine being compressed, which then has an effect on the rest of my spine, off which come the ribs. So there's a little bit of compression there. So that will lead to less freedom of the ribs. That then also sort of has an impact on the hips as well. So you've got to really just make sure from either feet up or head down, everything is as aligned as possible. So let's start from the bottom. Feet under the hips. And I mean hip joint, not what your mama gave you, hip size, for all the women out there, because women are very unkind to themselves when it comes to hips. You say hip width and they go like a metre.
Right.
A metre apart.
We're talking bones here.
Yes. So if you think about the joint, that ball and socket joint up at the hip.
Yeah.
So feet hip width apart. Imagine you've got a tripod sort of on the bottom of your feet. So you've got 2 points on the balls of the foot and 1 point on the heel. And over that tripod, just make sure you're evenly distributing the weight. So you've got a lovely feeling of grounding. Some people like to imagine roots going out of the bottom of the feet into the floor. Yep. Some people like to imagine their feet are in a sand pit or stuck in mud. Something like that gives you a good solid connection to the floor. And travelling up, you're allowing the knees to stay released. And I don't mean so released that you're really working your quads. I just mean, let the kneecaps go. Just make sure you're not locking back. Then we're allowing the tailbone or the bum to feel ever so slightly heavy. So it just drops a little bit towards the floor. Then you're allowing the spine to be long. We're not doing straight back or anything because that's anatomically inaccurate. If you have a straight back, you've got serious issues. The spine has 4 curves in it and we need to let those curve where they need to. And then we're allowing the shoulders to release. And a lot of my clients like the feeling that the shoulder blades are kind of dripping or melting down the back. And then we're allowing the neck to be free and long. And we're allowing the head just to sit up on the top there and kind of wobble like a nodding dog. Do they have those in America?
Yeah.
Nodding dog toys.
Or the waving cat.
Yes, waving cat, amazing. That feeling, but with your neck and your head. So what we're allowing is, and we're just, the thing that helps most of my clients is thinking long in the back of the neck. So you're allowing length in the back of the neck between, say, just between the shoulder blades and what's called the occipital bone, or the big bulgy bit on the back of your skull.
Yeah.
Length there rather than at the front. We don't want any length at the front because that's going to raise the chin. You've got to think long in the back of the neck. So it's all about alignment. Then allow the jaw to release, allow the tongue to stay free on the floor of the mouth. And you're good to go.
Oh, I love it.
Stay like that forever.
Yeah, it's like sort of vertical, is it Shavasana? Is that what it's called in yoga?
Yeah,
Shavasana.
Completely
relax.
Ooh.
I've done yoga a couple of times. I'm terrible at it, but
yeah.
Thank you. No, that absolutely makes that's fantastic. I was doing that as you were saying it, and you just sort of, releasing those stresses and pressures will help with performance, but I can also see that with maintaining a session for a longer period as well. So is sitting just a complete no in that?
No, absolutely not. No? I'm sitting now and my alignment's tip top, she says.
Well, we can't see, but we'll take your word for it.
Lads, I'm killing it. Absolutely killing it. So I've got, basically what you need to do is just find as many of those touch points as you can, but with your arse on a chair. So you're allowing feet gently and firmly on the floor with those tripod points engaged. Try and allow right angles. That would be the, I suppose, checkpoint here. So right angle between the lower leg and the upper leg at the knee, and then right angle at the hip and the torso, and then allowing the spine to stay long, the neck free, the shoulders can still stay released. The issue that sometimes happens with seated sessions is the chair and the mic aren't in the right position. So you end up leaning forward, jutting the chin to reach the microphone. So always remember to say, "Hi, Mr. Technician Man, please can you come and put the microphone forward or down?" and just ask them to help you out, because that tiny little question then will save you a whole heap of issues when, 7 hours into whatever book it is you're recording, you realise you're not having as much vocal freedom or you're pushing for air. You just want to make sure you can allow the abs to stay free. One thing, just to, I suppose, preempt a question that might be in people's heads, often voiceover can be very physical, and things like gaming and animation and even corporate narration, depending on the topic. People like to get their bodies into it, and I understand that it can feel, sometimes putting someone in an aligned position feels really restricted. So just what you have to sort of do is experiment and play around with how you can find that even that head, neck, back relationship within the position that you want to take on. So if you're playing like a little elf or something, absolutely find that position, take on that physicality, but just check in with, is there a way you can do it where you're not jutting your chin forward? Is there a way you can do it where you're not, turning your knees in, or where you're not standing on one foot? So there are checkpoints that you can do within those physically grotesque positions that will allow more vocal freedom and allow that alignment to stay true.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh,
physically grotesque. I like that.
Oh yeah, that's good. I'm going to take that out and use that as the ad for this episode. How to become physically grotesque.
Physically Grotesque by Nic Redman.
Love it. Okay, so we're going to get on to diet in a little while, but before we get there, and this may actually tie into it anyway, there are a couple of technical things that I know you know, and most voice actors, particularly female voice actors, suffer from, and that's sibilance. And everyone, male or female, suffer from mouth noise. So what are some things that you can do to mitigate those?
So mouth noise is pure and simply a hydration issue. There are a couple of medical things or little sort of gentle pathologies that can lead to it, like postnasal drip or things like that. But to be honest, 9 times out of 10, it's hydration. And the amount of water or fluid that somebody needs is dependent on many, many things. So it's not as easy as just saying, you need to drink 8 glasses a day, the end. It's about understanding your body and noticing how much fluid you need. It's very dependent on diet as well. So someone who has a lot of fruit and vegetables, who has a good diet, is going to need less water than someone who maybe eats a load of pizza and burgers all the time, or has a slightly different diet, or a diet that's higher in salt, for example. So it's about listening to your body really and noticing how much you need. Mouth noise is hydration related. So what's happening is the saliva and the mucosa and everything that's working that we need to keep things fluid and lubricated is stickier and sort of claggier than normal. So what you want to be doing is thinning that out. And it takes somewhere between 4 and 8 hours for water that's ingested to get into the saliva and the mucus and to thin it out and start doing its work. So if you have a session at 2, there's no point having 4 pints of water at 1:30. Yeah. You're just going to need a piss halfway through. Oh, sorry. You're just going to need the toilet. Okay. I'm just glad I said piss and not pish, the Irish way. So you just have to do it the day before. But just stay hydrated all the time. It would be my advice. Short-term solutions. A lot of people say green apples are very good. So if you have a lot of saliva, the acid from a green apple or some lemon water or something may help. You just have to be careful with highly acidic foods if you're ingesting them just before you voice, that you're not having too much, because too much acid on the back of the pharynx, the back of the throat there, isn't going to be comfortable. And depending on the person, maybe, cause a little bit of pain or whatever. I got through a really nightmare video game session with just hot water and lemon, and it was amazing. I was screaming and shouting for hours on end, but it got me through. Good. You have to be careful with hot things. That heat will dilate blood vessels a little bit. So there is sometimes a little bit more risk of hemorrhage, not of the vocal folds, because that water isn't going to hit your vocal folds because it goes down the feeding tube and not the air tube. Yeah, hopefully. But if you're a fan of steaming, for example, which is very good for vocal health, make sure you're not steaming during a session or steaming and then voicing straight away, because the steam is the hot sort of water droplets will sit on the vocal folds, and some people say rehydrate from the outside in. But the heat will dilate the blood vessels a little bit, and that can leave them open to hemorrhage a little bit more easily and freely. So if you're steaming, 5-10 minutes, just hot steam, but at least 30 minutes to an hour before you're going to be voicing.
Yeah. Oh, okay, great. And what about sibilance?
Sibilance. So sibilance is, she says, doing it to have a little think. Sibilance is just about a little bit of extra airflow coming through or a little bit of gap in the articulation. So it would be about finding what's causing that sibilance and looking into the closure and noticing if there's anything that could be done just to tweak the articulation. Right. So if you're somebody who has a sibilant S, like for example, you say for me 6 slimy sausages in your normal voice.
6 slimy sausages.
Okay, so now try and affect that sibilance. 6 slimy sausages, and what can you feel happening?
To exaggerate it?
Yeah.
6 slimy sausages.
So what does it feel like is happening?
I'm sort of putting my tongue behind my teeth.
Yeah, good. Well, so the tongue feels a little bit further forward, maybe?
Yeah, and I'm sort of reducing the mouth hole.
I'm reducing my mouth hole. I like that.
I'm sort of using my bottom sort of lip to sort of focus the air a little bit. I think
okay, so happening. Other bits are taking over. What can happen is that you're just not getting a nice, neat closure of the tongue up towards the palate there, and that's just letting a little bit more air through, for example. So it would just be about finding out specifically where the sibilance is coming in and making sure the contact between the articulators that should be happening is happening efficiently. Right.
You said there about sort of in the short term fixing some of these things. I think back to a session I did a number of years ago when I was actually engineering it, and a lady came in and she had real mouth noise problems, and we had to just send her home because this was actually when RX was in its early days, so we didn't have RX, which is usually the fix-all for everything like this.
Yeah.
But it was just coming through on every syllable. You know, you could hear it on everything, sort of mouth sounds. So you say Granny Smiths are a way of sort of dealing with that in the short term, but chugging water is not going to affect you for 4 to 6 hours. So
yeah. Well, short-term solutions, anything that's sort of acidic content. So I know people who swear by really good quality fresh pineapple juice as well.
Oh, okay.
Or green apples, I hear a lot. And look, having a glass of water to thin out the saliva right in there in the mouth will work for a line. So whether you've got the patience to just say the line, drink, that sort of a thing, it's just going to again, you're just going to be weeing a lot.
Yeah.
One of the thing, it happens a lot if you ever listen to, experts who come to talk on the radio and they're maybe not used to that kind of pressurised adrenaline nervous situations. They're a bit anxious, they're a bit nervous. And what the body does then is sometimes it can, it stops producing these sorts of salivas and things. So the mouth gets a little bit clickier, and you sometimes hear these interviews of people on the radio and they've horrible amounts of click because they're nervous and they've not got enough saliva going on. As your body stops when you're nervous, your body doesn't know the difference between saber-toothed tiger or speaking on the radio.
Right,
so it just stops anything that is a non-necessary for escape or survival function.
Right.
So it'll just stop saliva. It'll go, oh God, we don't need that. Hang on a sec. We need to keep breathing. We'll do that.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is, if you're one of those people who gets nervous and the saliva starts to thicken and build up, make sure you're really, really hydrated. And have a green apple in your pocket, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. That's great. Okay. Now, a couple more things real quick. I say a couple more things real quick, but this is kind of a big subject, and that's diet. So is there any way you can sort of sum up the do's and don'ts dietary-wise? And again, I know everyone's different, and you say some people can eat and drink whatever they like, and it seems not to affect them. It's definitely not been the case with me. I had to basically take out dairy from my life. I still have it a little bit, but what are some big do's and don'ts diet-wise?
Let's talk about the things that people often mention are the issues. Dairy.
Yeah.
Yes, dairy is something that for quite a lot of people seems to have an effect and can thicken the mucus. So if you are somebody for whom that happens, then you do need to think about it like you did, I suppose. What was the problem with the dairy, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I was just realising that, I was just totally used to, like, in the morning, just having to blow my nose, and because I blew my nose, it inflamed my nasal passages, and, I sounded a bit more nasally. And, I just love tea and cereal and all the wrong things to have, And so with a heavy heart, I just got rid of it. And then within a couple of weeks, I was like, oh my God, I'm a different person. You know, I like wake up in the morning and I sound clear and fresh as a daisy, you know. So that sort of, you know, taught me that was just a necessary evil for doing this job, that I really had to back off the dairy.
Oh, God love you. How do you survive without cheese? Oh, mate.
No, I know. I mean, anyway. Like I say, I don't cut it out 100%. I do have the odd little nibble to keep my, mind from not freaking out totally.
Yeah. So, the number one do tune into how your body reacts to foods, because there's no point giving up a food if actually it doesn't do anything to you. That's just pain for no reason. Yeah. So do experiment. Do check what dairy does. If you're having an issue, cut it out and see if it helps. If not, shove it back in again, and happy days, cheese toasty. People often talk about caffeine as one issue. The recent research that I've been made aware of, as we know it now, it's always subject to change, is that if you're a regular coffee drinker, the diuretic effect, so the peeing effect, which leads to dehydration, probably won't happen because your body will be used to processing the caffeine. Yeah. So you may be able to drink as much coffee as you want, happy days. If you're every now and again, because you've got a toddler caffeine drinker, i.e. me, so every now and again I'll have an espresso or an espresso martini if I can find one, then it probably will cause those diuretic effects. So you need to be careful there in terms of noticing what your caffeine intake is. Alcohol is unfortunately a huge no for 99% of people. So don't have a couple of Bellinis with your breakfast and then go in to do an epic gaming session. Right. If you're going out on the Rang Dangler, as we call it in Ireland, the night before, don't be so stupid. But if you have to, then chase every drink with some water. Keep hydrated, counteract the effects before they can happen. Yeah. Also, your hangover
that can help with a hangover as well. That's what I was going to
say. Exactly. So just chase it with water if you're in the old booze. Smoking, don't. Yeah. Is the overall advice. All the research points to that in terms of vocal health. Now, look, there are people out there who smoke loads and their voice is fine, and maybe even their interesting voice may be due in part to a life of smoking, and that's absolutely your choice. Right. But if you go to a vocal coach with fatigue and breathing issues and excess saliva and you say you're a smoker, then we're going to say, give up smoking. Yeah. And if you say no, we're going to say, see you later. I can't be bothered.
Right, yeah.
So you do have to be careful there. Do keep hydrated. Do eat lots of fresh fruit and vegetables. Some random foods that seem to affect people are things like potatoes, red meat, cereal, bananas, soy products, eggs, those corn products, those sorts of things can have random effects on your hydration and your mucus levels and your mucus, I suppose, viscosity. So it's just about noticing how things affect you. A big don't, of course, is don't have a big old cream donut and then rock into a session, because that's probably going to affect the mouth area pretty severely in that moment.
I was going to ask about sugar in general.
Yeah. What have you heard about sugar?
I just heard avoid it. You know, I mean, I use these sort of energy bars to sort of perk me up, you know, before a session, you know, because if I'm going into New York to do a session, for example, you know, I've got to get the train, it's early in the morning or what have you. You know, I'll avoid, you know, obviously no dairy or anything like that. But, you know, by the time I've got into the city and, you know, trudged across town, you know, I'm sort of a little bit depleted energy-wise. So I'll just perk myself up with a bit of a sugary bar or something like that. But I have heard that it's something to avoid, but, you know, it's never really affected me in a way that I've noticed, you know.
Well, I suppose the thing with sugar is they talk about the spike in insulin, don't they? And the fatigue you can get from that. So if you're having sugar and then going into a big session, you're probably more likely to have a big epic sort of crash and feel fatigued, which will have an effect on your ability to check on the alignment, allow the breath to be energetic and full and supporting the voice. So I would imagine in that sense, it's probably best to avoid it. I'm very much not like one of these extreme diet people who says, you know, oh my God, I'm giving up sugar and it's changing my life because I'm going to have some wine and I'm going to have some chocolate.
Yeah.
I like those.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have them before a session, I suppose. I'm not hugely aware of any impact of sugar on the voice like directly in my head now, unless there's some research there that I haven't come to yet. So I'm afraid I can't comment on its effects directly on the voice, but definitely in terms of energy levels for the body as a whole, it will have an impact.
Right.
For some people.
Yeah. Yeah, well, everyone can sort of look that up, and I know that a lot of this stuff changes as well. New scientific research comes out, and this affects this, and you have to stay on top of all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure
it's
that's
like,
a
what's
bit of a
giving us
headache.
cancer this week? Do you know what I mean?
Right, exactly. Apples, don't eat apples.
No.
So I have two more questions, and they're both sort of non sequiturs, really. But the first one is, we talked about video games earlier. Are there things that you can do to protect your voice in really strenuous video games? Now, this is a hot topic in voiceover right now, particularly here in the US with the union. So, there are sessions that can really, really, just thrash your voice. So do you have some techniques that can help protect yourself?
Yeah, the first thing is alignment. It all comes back to alignment. Check in with what's going on with the body. If you're getting down and dirty to do some screaming and stuff, are you allowing the spine and the neck and the ribs and to stay in line? Are you allowing the abdominals to release so the breath can come in and the body can do all that natural support of the diaphragm that it wants to do? If we're putting a lot of strain on the vocal folds by doing screaming and all that kind of stuff, there are safe ways to do it, but there's nothing I could say right now that will help everybody. It's about it's if you're someone who's in that situation, then invest in a coach and talk to them about it, and they'll give you some techniques. So there are things like, firstly, the alignment, secondly, the breath, thirdly, noticing if you're working with excess tension to get the sound that you don't actually need. So if you're doing a big rip-roaring, falling off a bridge scream, do you need to do it to the extent that you're doing it to get in terms of physical and in terms of tension and holding as you might need to? So some people, because you're putting all the effort in, it gets really tense, and that's the thing that's going to cause the damage. If you can play around with finding a little bit more vocal freedom within those sorts of intense sounds, then it's going to be more helpful. Like, you don't need excess volume to get a lot of this stuff. You just need consistent airflow. Like, for example, Celine, I learnt this at the weekend, like Celine Dion, she's singing big and high. She's actually not singing that loud, but her body looks like she's singing loud.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? She's really putting it in the body. But what she's doing is allowing the breath to stay nice and free and flowing consistently. And she's got the mic up nice and close. So talk to the technician and say, look, is this sound okay if I get this close to the microphone? Because ultimately voice safety has to come first. There are things you can do to help extreme voicing, like so you can use like an H or an aspirate onset to anything that starts with a vowel. So if your phrase is oi, and you've got to do that loads and loads, that vowel is basically like, when you do it intensely, is like you're smashing your vocal folds together. You're like oi, oi, like that. So what you can do is think about having more of an airy onset. So if you practice any vowel phrases that start with a vowel, or it's like oi, over there, for example, if you had to do that like 96 different ways, as you often have to in gaming, rather than going oi, over there, practice it with hoi, hover there, hoi, hover there. So you're getting a slightly gentler closure. And I know the line isn't hoi, hover there, but over time then what you do is you take the sound of the H out, but you keep the idea that the folds are coming together more softly. So you start with hoi, 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 over there. And then eventually you're doing it with the same energy and the same force, but with much softer closure of the vocal folds. So you cut out a lot of those really hideous, harsh glottal onsets, which are basically like, if I won't do it now because I'll blow your eardrums, but if I clapped my hands together in one massive clap, that's what you're doing. So that's a good one. Yeah.
And presumably, again, it comes down to everyone's a little bit different. The one thing that I noticed when I was doing it is I'm much better when it comes to screaming and shouting compared to whispering. Whispering canes my voice for some reason. I don't know why. It must be my technique or something, but...
No, it's not you.
No, okay, good.
But, you're fine. What whispering is basically an unvoiced sound. So with voice, most of the time when I'm speaking, hello, how are you, la-di-da-di-da, my vocal folds are coming together nicely, they're opening, they're closing, they're waving away and regulating the airflow.
Yeah.
What you get is, with whispering, is no closure. So you just get the sound whooshing through the vocal folds.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is put a little bit more effort in to making the sound. Because if you don't, if I don't, well, I could do it, but you won't hear me.
Yeah.
If I'm just letting the air come through open vocal folds, then there's nothing happening. So what you're doing is like pushing the air to get a little bit more feeling that there's actually sound happening. And what that does is just send too much air through too quickly, and then they get really tense and dry and upset.
Yeah, I definitely experienced that.
So, I mean, the advice would be don't whisper, or if you have to whisper for a session, think about whether whisper is actually necessary, or can you get away with it being a voiced sound, but a really quiet voiced sound, you know?
Yeah.
Like stage whispering, I suppose.
Yeah. With microphones, of course, you can get away with getting right on it and doing a sort of breathy sound, you know. But
voiced sounds are much better for the mic anyway. The last thing an engineer wants is like loads of air.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Oh, okay. That's great to know.
It's not you.
And I would like to... good. I'd like to finish this up by sort of tying it all together and sort of imagining that you've got a huge session tomorrow, big high-profile session. What would you start to do in preparation, and how would the whole process go for you? I mean, presumably you say you start preloading liquids the day before, and then let's go through going to the session, let's go warming up, and then in the session, and let's do the whole thing. Okay,
so I would get a nice, as I keep high water levels anyway, so I would just be making sure I'm drinking as much as I need to. I would get a nice early night. I'd probably have something reasonably light for my, who am I kidding? I'd have a big tea because I like my food.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't eat too close to bedtime, so I'd probably eat sort of 5, 6-ish just to make sure the food can digest and whatnot, and there's no risk of reflux overnight or any acid travelling up towards the back of the pharynx, because that can be an issue for people. I'd get a good night's rest if I can, because rest, when it comes down to it, is the best thing for the body and the voice. I'd probably do something nice, sort of active in the morning, so if I could walk to the session or do a bit of exercise, probably do a bit of yoga, like have a bit of a stretch out at home just to make sure everything's nice and loose. I try and do a lot of my warming up in the shower because it's nice and steamy.
Yeah.
So I'll do a little gentle workout in the shower while I'm getting myself all washed, as we would say in Northern Ireland. So I'd do a little bit of in the shower. I'd do some tongue stretches and some lip stretches and some silly little tongue twisters, just playing around. I find most of my clients respond best to little and often and making this practice integrated into life. So if I say to somebody, you need to do an hour of this every day, it's not going to happen. But if you say, right, every time you boil a kettle, say this tongue twister 4 times, or while you're brushing your teeth, just notice if you're releasing your abs or not, and sort of release and clench your abs 5 times. And also the science behind neural pathways is little and often, you know, for building new habits. Anyway, so I'd probably make sure I had a good physical release before I leave the house, and a good breakfast, something that's not going to repeat on me, you know, or make me burp. And on the way to the session, I'd probably just try and relax. So get there in the least stressful way. If you're in London, that's often quite hard.
I was going to say, good luck with that.
Avoid the tube. Depending how big the session is, treat yourself to a taxi. And then get there in good time. I always get there like ridiculously early, because then I've got room for something to go wrong. So even if I'm late, I'm not actually late, because the last thing you want is, I'm so sorry, okay, let's do this, you know, and then going straight into the session. So give yourself time. Have a little coffee, you know, or a tea, or a herbal tea, or a hot lemon, whatever. Give yourself time to get there, to acclimatise psychologically to the situation. And then I'd probably find somewhere to have a gentle little rub of the neck, maybe do some washing of the teeth with the tongue, do some like lip work, something that's not too who's that crazy lady doing mad Egypt things with her voice in the corner.
Like snogging someone would be good warm up.
Absolutely. Bring someone along to snog. God, I've never thought about that. A good one's jiggling your lips with your fist as well. So you put your hand in the fist and just give your top lip a jiggle, give your bottom lip a jiggle. Stretching the tongue, just playing around, trying to touch every little area inside your mouth with the tip of your tongue. Is a really good one, just to stretch out the tongue a little bit. And then if you are nervous and you're someone for whom adrenaline has quite an effect on either the saliva levels or your ability to allow the breath in freely or the voice itself, focus on the out breath. What people tend to do is, okay, deep breath, and then they end up with tension in the chest, the abdominals holding and stacking the breath in. If you focus on the out breath, the body will do the in breath for you. So if you let the breath out and you use the breath and then give it a moment, release the abs and the body will breathe in for you. That's how it's designed. Otherwise we'd die in our sleep. So as long as you focus on the out breath, if you're nervous, the body will take the in breath for you. So that's the biggest one.
Yeah,
I think in terms of nerves. Was that a useful answer?
Very useful. Yeah, this whole chat has been fascinating and completely unexpected from me. For so many of the subjects, I knew you'd do a good job, but some of the answers to the questions were completely unexpected. Really, really interesting. So thank you so much.
No problem. It's been really nice.
Yeah.
I want just to, spread the word. And I just, I suppose, as a closing thought, I just want everybody to think about the fact that it doesn't have to take up hours of your time every day. There's definitely, and this is another thing, you can tell I just went on a course because I've got all this new exciting information. Bit of a course junkie. But the guy pointed out very much the difference between a warm-up and a workout. So a warm-up doesn't need to take you more than 5 to 15 minutes just to get you, if it's tailored enough, into your performance-ready state, whereas a workout may be a slightly longer thing you do once or twice a week, which works on the breath and the whole body and a lot more things. So a warm-up itself doesn't have to take a long time. It can be 5 to 15 minutes. So if you're interested in that, absolutely get in touch with someone and talk to them about your needs, talk to them about the things that maybe sometimes happen or the articulation things you've been told about, the ridiculous feedback you get from people when they say things like, you need to use your support, or you need to use your diaphragm, or you're sibilant, but they don't give you any answers.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Which is what happens a lot with actors. And just get someone to help you with it.
Okay, so what if they want to have you help them with it? How do they find out more about you?
Who, me? Wow. Gosh, I don't know what to say.
It's almost like you were fishing for that.
What? I don't do fishing. No, I do.
Sorry.
That's fine. I'm on Twitter, at Nic Redman Voice, at Nic Redman Voice. I'm also on Facebook, Nic Redman Voice.
And Nic spelled N-I-C?
N-I-C, yes. Oh, yeah. N-I-C. REDMAN voice. Or my website, which is nicredmanvoice.com. Or probably if you just Google Northern Irish voiceover, you'll find me.
Yeah. Are there many of you around?
No, thank God.
All right. Well, Nic Redman, thank you so much. That was a fascinating chat. And I hope that helps a lot of people listening.
Thank you.
So there we are. That was a fun chat and full of a ton of stuff that you're probably going to have to Google. But this is good. This is the point of this podcast. I want this to be a jumping off point for you to then go and continue your research and work with coaches in your local area and people that you connect with online and all that fun stuff. So thank you, Nic. All that information was fascinating and you made it palatable, which is a miracle considering all the physiological terms that you were using. So as I said at the start, definitely connect with us on social media. You can find all the links on our website, VOSchoolpodcast.com. And stay tuned for some exciting announcements. And we've also got some really, really fascinating and rather important episodes coming up. So yeah, that's a rather mysterious ending to this episode. To all of you going to VO Atlanta, I wish you a great weekend. I'm really, really bummed that I can't make it. And if you're on the way there and you're listening to this, I hope your journey is safe. And if you're on the way back, I'm sure you're still buzzing from everything that happened. So yeah, I'm very envious of you. Okay, I'll stop talking now, so I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening. Bye. Thank you to this week's guest, to our sponsor J. Michael Collins and Backstage Magazine. Thanks also to Kyle Marie Colucci and Chris Sharps for social media support. Join us next time for another class.